Hey there, welcome to the show. I'm your host, Una Duncan, and here is my question for you today. What if our muscles aren't just about looking good in a tank top, but we're actually the key to our longevity, our mood, our identity, and even our soul? I always kind of thought of muscle as just like meat, meat that makes us move. But today's guest is the brilliant and badass Bonnie Tsui, award winning journalist and author of the new book on muscle. She's going to teach us that muscle is so much more than just meat. We talk about why women have historically been discouraged from building muscle and why that's changing right now. We unpack the myths about strength and beauty, and we chat about Hollywood abs. We talk about how puberty and menopause shape our bodies and our beliefs about what we're capable of. And why your glutes are not just good for Instagram marketing, they might be the unsung heroes of human evolution. Oh, and we get to the real reason why you should care about your grip strength. You are going to leave this conversation with a new appreciation of your muscles. And don't be surprised if you suddenly want to go and lift something really heavy. Here's Bonnie.
Ready to break up with your bullshit? I mean, all those excuses that are keeping you stuck. Because you have one life to live. And if you're not having fun yet, then that's a problem, dude. Welcome to Goals, Grit, and some woo-woo shit. The podcast where you learn about the habits of kicking ass at life. Whether you want to get ripped, get rich, or just get high on life, this is the place to be. Here's your host, best-selling author and feel-good expert, Una Duncan.
Bonnie Tsui, thank you so much for being here.
I'm so glad to be here with you, Una. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm super pumped. I really enjoyed your book on muscle, and I'm excited to read your other books. But I wanted to talk about on muscle for a second. So you are a swimmer, you're a runner, you're a journalist, and now you've written this book. What made you want to dive in specifically to the topic of muscles?
I think muscles are in the zeitgeist in a way that they haven't been before, and I will explain. So the reason that I wanted to write the book, one is a personal through line of this kind of continuing this conversation about movement and the body that I started with Why We Swim. And I just kind of wanted to write more about that. And so muscle and movement seem to be a really great way to write about that, to talk about that. And muscle being this thing that we often take for granted. We don't give it the credit that it deserves. And so I think I also wanted to celebrate muscle as this kind of like unsung hero of our bodies that we, is always like in the hierarchy of body organs. It's like down here and like brain is up here. And so I kind of wanted to, bring it up here and be commensurate with that.
Yeah, it's just like meat, because that's what we think of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it does so much more than move us around. And, again, like with this, you've read the book, but this personal through line with my dad being this artist and martial artist who kind of trained my brother and me up in his studio when we were kids. And I didn't realize until I started writing this book how much that did shape my own life. But I also actually think like in the last few years, even in the process of writing this book, what I've observed in how we talk about muscle is like a really big change. And that is this convergence of this trend of you seeing bodies and people in the gym lifting weights and lifting heavy that you didn't see before. And by that, I mean, there's a certain kind of body that we picture when we think about lifting weights, right? And it's a stereotype and it's a certain person and it's a man. And now, like in the gym, you'll see at least half of the people who are in the weight room are women, and young women and people like lifting confidently, and they are lifting for strength and health. And there is that fitness aspect. And also from a health standpoint, your doctors are telling you at your physical, every single level, age, gender, body type, you've got to do some strength training for health at every age. And I think that's the real change. There's this critical mass of medical scientific scholarship that this message is kind of coming across to when we go to see our doctors, or when we go to, just get a routine physical, or when you kind of ask, like, what are the things that I should be doing now that maybe I'm not doing? And that has been huge, I think.
It's true. There used to, I feel like when I was growing up, there was such a stronger emphasis on cardio because obviously,
Yeah,
number
for
one
sure.
killer of North Americans is heart disease. So they're
Hmm.
like, all right, well, get
Hmm.
out there, get your heart rate up and, sustain it for 20 minutes. That was kind of the standard health recommendation kind of as I was
Right.
growing up. And now it really is so much stronger emphasis on strength training. And I read somewhere, I wonder if you know the actual stat because I'm going to forget the number and then I'm just talking at my ass really. But I read somewhere that and it was something like there's been a 300% increase in women doing strength training and weightlifting over the past,
Hmm.
5 years or something like that.
Hmm.
Do you know what the
I
stats are?
I don't know what the stats are, but I have actually seen some reported ones over the last few years as well, and we can cross check those. But suffice it to say that there is an increase, and I mean I'm all for it, and I think it is really because not just again like of this. Not just the fitness pendulum swinging in this direction of physical strength for women, but also the health messaging and the health research, overall health for all of us. And I think that is a signal moment right now.
I like that you're emphasizing for all of us at every age and stage, because what's interesting to me is, so I work mostly with kind of women between 40 and 60. So there's a lot of talk about perimenopause and menopause and all these shifts. And there's a huge like, oh my gosh, what should women at this age be doing? They should be doing strength training. And I'm like, absolutely. And you should have been doing that before too. And our teenagers need to be strength training.
Right.
And, this is not new. At every age, we should be doing strength training.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the reinforcement and reasserting for you to your client, like to the people you're seeing, and your audience is so important because we as women need to hear it at every stage of life.
Yeah.
And so I am like you, the parent of 2 kids. And when my kids were on swim team, I just remember this, and this was really stood out to me because it was so in contrast with my own experience with swim team growing up. I remember attending one of the swim team events with the other parents and the kids. And this other swim team mom told me that her daughter, who is 12 years old, had recently expressed to her that she had concerns about continuing to swim because she didn't want her shoulders to get too big and bulky. And I just was taken aback. And of course, I know about all of this messaging. I know about all the concerns that like women and girls have had in the past about like appearing too bulky or appearing too masculine, and muscles have in the past been associated with masculinity. And this is something that I really break down in the book and address and talk about in a way that I think peels back some of the layers on like why we think this and how that is problematic and also really contra to our actual health. But to go back to this parent, and I said to her, I asked her some questions and she said, yeah, she's really enjoyed swimming, but she's at an age now. So puberty, right? We were talking about this a little bit ahead of our podcast recording, but that 12 years old is when a lot of the girls fall out of sports. And it is when puberty hits and there are these concerns then societally, culturally over like the body and what this body is doing and how it's growing and changing and it's sending signals about sexuality. And now you're being viewed in this way. And so it's all complicated. It's all mushed together. And where for me as a kid at that age, sports was so empowering and helped me to understand my body as like a functional thing. It had purpose and
rather than an object of
exactly
desire
what it looked
or,
like.
Yeah.
And of course, like those are always there, right? But there's a little bit of understanding that your body is for more than being looked at by other people. And so she was just kind of expressing to me and reminding me with her daughter, just like, oh, these trends and these ideas still persist in the culture in a way that really can knock kids out of this really positive experience towards body image and self-esteem. And certainly everyone's experience varies as the story is kind of illustrating, but it was so I kind of told her about my experience. She said, I really want my daughter to have that too. And so I think the more we talk about it, the more we kind of, and with all of the kids, about what it is that they are facing at this age. Puberty is so fraught with change, and also like you're getting the glimmers of what it is to be an adult in the world and who you want to be and what is important to you as a body too in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Occupying this body, what you want your body to be like. And we're so vulnerable to those ideas.
Yeah, at that age. I remember I used to teach the course that certifies personal trainers, and I'd ask my students, which gender do you think is most likely to continue exercising throughout their life? And it was really interesting. There was always a huge split in the class, and a lot of people would say, well, women are much more likely to continue exercising because they have much more pressure on them to look a certain way, and then right. But the answer is that men are much more likely to continue exercising because there's so many off ramps for women. You're right.
Yes.
During puberty, so many huge exodus from women's sports. Also during childbearing age, huge exodus, right? And then again around menopause, again, huge exodus. So, but men don't have those as many off ramps.
And to your point, puberty, menopause, childbirth, off ramps there when we really need those to stay
exactly
in the health and in our best selves, like kind of reinforcing our bodies to be like to have the resources to draw on for these really challenging periods in our lives.
Totally. When my clients are like, I'm going through a really stressful time right now, so I'm just going to pause on my workout. I'm like, no, now.
Don't stop.
This is the worst time. No, this is when you need it the most. Absolutely. I wanted to ask you, you talk about how muscle has always been attached to attraction and status and social power. And then you say, well, that's why we might have some ideas about why certain people like women can't get too muscular. So do you think that's changing? Because there is a little bit of even a fashion for maybe a more muscular look in women, but it's a very specific kind of muscular look.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Maybe you want to talk about the Hollywood workouts.
Yeah, sure. So in one of the chapters of the book on form, right? So that's sort of where I investigate these questions of the ideal body and where those come from. And I had this lark in my head. I was like, I would love to ask a bunch of anatomists at a medical school about what it would take or like what muscles actually like signal strength and are they actually functional? And so the question had to do with like Marvel superheroes, like if you were a Hollywood trainer, so training, men and women, male and female actors for superhero roles. And first off was like Captain America, which is like this quintessential triangle shape, right? And also like what would be the muscles to signal strength, and are they actually the most functional for strength? And of course it was like your traps and your pecs and your biceps and your triceps and all this and your lats and like this your six pack. And it's so funny because everybody is and the thing that kind of jumped out was like the whole idea of the six pack, which we all think about as like, you must be so fit if you have a visible six pack. And one of the anatomists was just sort of like, well, actually, the funny thing about that is that everyone thinks that, but it can also just mean that you're naturally really lean. And so they're visible and like your whole body doesn't actually reflect the strength that six pack might signify. And it was really interesting because we're so fixated on certain things and they don't actually necessarily
indicate strength.
The appearance, right?
Yeah.
And so the biceps, like biceps breaking, also like such a wonderful example of that, which is like, this is the emoji for strength. And yet it's only the strongest muscle in the arm in this pose. And if it's like, extended, then it's the brachialis, which is just like this deeper, stronger muscle. And so it just depends. And then to me, that was like such a great way of saying like perspective means everything. And that is just like a multi-layered understanding of your body and how much culture and society has to do with how we come to these ideas.
And how we perceive strength.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and even if you watch the Olympics, the people who are in the like the strength, not the endurance, not the speed, not the agility, but the pure strength categories, they're often not that lean.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, they need so much. They need a lot of body to lift all that weight.
Yeah.
In general. And what I do love about the Olympics, and I think what really people around the world love about watching the Olympics is like all these different kinds of body, like the incredible human range of bodies that can excel in different things, and the beauty of that, like the variety, like and you don't necessarily understand these sports, and you don't understand necessarily how these people have come to excel, but you want to learn. And I think that wonder and awe is that's very pure. That's very I think that curiosity about the human body is something that I loved finding out about all these strength athletes, these strong people. For the strength section of the book, I kind of got into this world of like lifting and understanding this like really wonderful fascination, human fascination with like displays of strength. Like we are awed by it. And there is like a wonderful childlike wonder about that.
Yeah. Can you tell us about the woman who lifted the Scottish stones?
Yes. So Jan Todd is really one of my favorite people and characters in the book. And she is a pioneer powerlifter. She was profiled by Sports Illustrated as the world's strongest woman.
And what era are we talking about? 60s,
This
70s?
is in the 70s.
Okay,
and she, and this is before Title IX. This is before women's sports were a thing. And she was doing these incredible feats of strength at that time. And she was the first woman to lift these Scottish stones of strength known as the Dinnie stones. And your listeners will know that, lifting a heavy thing is considered across human history like very much like a sign of goodness or ability or like leadership skills and stuff like that. And of course, traditionally that's been associated with men, as we've talked about. And so what does it mean when a woman can lift these stones of strength that indicate manhood? And so this section of the book really unpacks all of that. And also the fact that Jan Todd became this really respected sports historian and scholar of the strength sports. And she is now at UT Austin, and is just like both inhabited the body that could do these incredible things. Like she lifted the Dinnie stones, have a combined weight of 733 pounds. And this is like, wait, I was trying to think about what there's an analog, which is like a fully grown bear or something, a male bear or something like that. She used to lift the side of her like Ford Fiesta, like for fun,
Oh my gosh.
or to demonstrate at
That's
a party or something. And she was just, and I remember that the Sports Illustrated story, had her talking about strength in a way that to me felt really, groundbreaking. She was talking about the pleasure of being a strong woman and how it made her feel so capable in the world. And I seized on that because that was in the 70s. And obviously between then and now, like pendulum swings all the time of like fitness and like what beauty trends there are and what body types are attractive for women. And she said that at this time and was celebrated for that. And I think sometimes we forget that this happens and then we kind of go back and we regress. I mean, obviously there's a lot of regression happening in the world right now. And this is sort of one of them, or can be one of them, when we talk about women and strength and societal gender roles. And I think that is like very much correlated, and they are connected in these sort of like cultural shifts over time.
Is that true, Bonnie? Do we see that there's a more of an acceptance of, say, women in the weight room and gaining strength there, and women in politics? Like, is there that correlation? Do we see that?
I think they're correlated in many ways, these cultural trends. And oftentimes when women become powerful, become physical, then there is a pushback. And there's an example of this with women's suffrage, which is so interesting because in the fight for the vote, one of the strategies in the United States was to like promote exercise and physical strength for women. And, you know, the idea that to be free women, we had to be strong, right? Like we had to, and like for reproductive autonomy and physical health and all of that stuff to have control over our lives. And it was really interesting to see those two things kind of coming together, like physically and politically. And then there was, but then there's always like the pushback, like,
then it was flappers. You know, then
right,
it was like,
yeah,
oh, actually, no, you get to starve yourself down to nothing.
Right.
And the swing. Yeah.
Yeah. And you see this constantly. I mean, like, you know, when Hillary Clinton was running for president and they would talk about how women were not fit to be leaders. Because of menopause, which is like, then you'd be like, emotionally and mentally unstable, which is so hilarious. And I write this in the book because testosterone is the hormone that makes people reckless. Yeah. And obviously we see what happens in that arena. But anyway, all this is to say that there's a lot of pseudoscience governing women's bodies, and there always has been. And I think we always have to be like taking all of these things with a grain of salt and being really careful, and also very, I think practical and pragmatic, like paying attention, but also using common sense. And, you know, things shake out, right? I think there is a lot of information, and I know you know this, and I know your audience knows this too, in terms of like, you can find anything on the internet to kind of support your theory of health or anything. And it is becoming more and more difficult because of this like increase, like exponential increase in like material out there to tell you what to do, content, supported by fact or not. And so I think it's really important to surface the well-sourced science and the scholarship and the advice that really supports health.
Yeah, agree. Well, you mentioned earlier that one of the reasons that it gets a bit of a reaction when women are strong is because having a strong body and feats of strength were always sort of associated with leadership and nobility and strength of character and stuff like that. And it's so funny because we had a very similar story. I was in Italy last year and I said, why is everyone naked in all these statues? It's the same question you had. I love that you wrote it in the book because there's only so many naked statues. You can be like, wait a second, did they not have clothes? What's going on? And my tour guide answered me that basically exactly that a beautiful body was seen as a sign of a beautiful character and a beautiful soul. And so I wrote that on my social media and I said, hey, this is what was believed. What do you guys think? Does a beautiful body reflect a beautiful soul or a beautiful mind? It was beautiful mind. And oh man, people hated that. Hated it. Where do you think we are at with that right now? Or what do you think that strong reaction says about us?
Well, I think that is a reaction to this very specific kind of like muscular articulated body, right? That we're talking about in these statues in Italy or in Greece that date back to the ancients, right? So these philosophers would talk about, and again, like they're talking about male bodies, they're talking about, because they weren't writing about women, but they were talking about how a sound and strong mind and a sound and strong body like went hand in hand. And so the way, of course, that they sculpted these bodies was not necessarily reflective of reality, right? Like very few people actually had these bodies. And the fact that they sculpted these bodies with the bulging ripples where they didn't actually have muscles because they didn't understand where
really?
They went. They were just, they were just kind of like, so this bulgy stuff.
Make it lumpier over here.
Yeah. It indicates like this like rigor and control and discipline about your body, right? So they kind of like had that association anyway with muscle, even before they understood really what it was. And I would say, and that trickles down, right? To our medical textbooks, what bodies are on display. The Renaissance artists had such a huge influence still on what we see. Marvel superheroes, there's like a whole through line through, and I write about this in the book about where these ideas come from and how they trickle down and how they can be harmful, right? So I think your readers, your listeners, and audience are reacting to that sense of like that body was the healthy, ideal, beautiful body. Now, of course, these days we understand that to be different than that. There's a wider range of bodies available to us that signify health and wellness and, again, sound mind and body, strong mind and body, because not all of us look like that. And that it doesn't, when we don't look like that, it doesn't mean that we aren't strong. It doesn't mean, and it is like, I think it's important to kind of, again, understand where those ideas come from. And that I think there's a resistance to that imagery, right? Because it does perpetuate harmful stereotypes and also like of, disordered body image and eating that, for both men and women, which we know can come from that kind of imagery. And so I think that's probably what people are resisting. And I think that that's right. But I also love the idea, but I do love the idea of how mind and body do go together, because brain and muscle go together, right? So like in that way, that's true. And so, and in ways that the ancients definitely didn't understand, that muscle was not only the stuff that moves our skeletons around, but is an endocrine tissue. And as I write about in the book, which was like something I did not really know until I wrote the book.
Well, explain the significance of that for people who don't understand. What does that mean? It's an endocrine tissue. Yeah.
Sure. So endocrine tissue means that not only is it moving your skeleton around, it is secreting, signaling molecules that travel all around your body, talking to different parts of your body, including your brain. And when you move, when you start to exercise, this within minutes, like this wash of chemicals is happening in your body, messages are being sent all over the place and generating beneficial responses in your brain. So when you exercise, movement, your muscles, they send around these signaling molecules called myokines. And it's part of this whole conversation, this chatting that's happening between your muscles and your brain and other body systems. And things are happening like metabolism being ramped up, your immune system, immune cells being woken up, your blood sugar being regulated, your mood being regulated, tissue healing, and so much more. Like your all these hormones are coming around, endocannabinoids, dopamine, like just kind of making you feel well, because movement is good for you and movement feels good because of that. And so it's this like virtuous. And so your muscles are doing so much more than this. Okay. Your muscles are keeping your brain healthy. When you exercise, messages are being sent around your body to help your brain grow. Like your hippocampus, which governs learning and memory, gets bigger with exercise. So this whole idea of like bulking up your muscles, bulking up your brain is actually true. Like this part of your brain gets bigger. And that's why taking care of your muscles and having muscular health as you age is not just muscle health, it's cognitive health. It is immune health. It's cardiovascular health. It's all of these things. And that is why movement and muscle and exercise is so important to us.
And is that just movement, or is that specifically strengthening muscles? You know what I mean? Like the cognitive benefits specifically, is it really about muscle building that you really get the most of those benefits, or will cardio do just as well?
That's a really great question. Exercise of all kinds is good and important. Yep. Movement of all kinds is good and is important. We know that our muscle cells now have a memory of prior exercise. This is like different from the motor pattern of that we kind of associate with like riding a bike. You never forget how to ride a bike. That's not how that memory doesn't live in your muscles. That memory lives in your motor neurons. But in recent years, muscle scientists have now a new understanding about how our muscle cells themselves have a memory of prior exercise, such that even after a hiatus of like months and maybe even years, they remember how to respond to grow again and to get stronger again. And so there is evidence of this for both like cardio, right? So aerobic exercise and strength training. And both are important for your body and both are important for your cognitive health and cardiovascular health and all that stuff going forward and your longevity and your health span longevity, most importantly. So it's not about like one or the other, but increasingly, the messaging from people who are working on increasing health span as you age into later life, strength training is the single most important exercise that you could be doing because of all the reasons that I talked about. And it's not to say you shouldn't be taking walks, dancing, doing any kind of movement that makes you happy, that you love doing and you'll continue to do it, swimming, surfing, biking, walking, whatever, jumping rope, chasing your kids around. That is important, but strength training is going to be the most bang for your buck in terms of your health span.
Mm-hmm. And you gave, in my work, I've seen examples of people building incredible muscle at every age. And you tell a story about Elaine doing push-ups at 97 years old.
She's doing little modified push-ups, but she's still
amazing.
Doing them.
That's amazing.
And that's incredible. And that, to your point, starting late doesn't mean that these changes aren't going to happen for you. Actually, I was just at this health conference where I gave a talk, and then the first person who came up to me was this like guy who was in his 60s, and he said, I just started taking Ozempic. I have lost this much weight. I am the healthiest I've been. All these markers are like, it's all good stuff. My heart, blah, 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 blah. And he said, but I have one problem. Do you know what that is? And I'm like, your muscle. And he said, my muscle, because of course, with the GLP-1s, that you not only when you lose all that weight, the muscle also is going too, right? So you have to be just as you have to be a little bit more committed to strength training, which is like that's what we all should be doing, not just if we're on these drugs, these weight loss drugs that help us to, get closer to health if we have been struggling with this. So I said, have you ever, done strength training? He said, I just started working with a trainer, but he said, is it too late for me? And I said, I was so happy to say, absolutely not. Talk to me in a month,
Nice.
Like really talk to me in a month and you will understand you are changed. And I think that's so cool. It's so cool to be able to say that, there's so much evidence that says that, and that I could feel confident in saying you will feel different and stronger and like capable.
And he's going to have the beginner gains.
Right. I know, because he hasn't ever done strength training.
So lucky that guy. Yeah,
I know. That's what I was telling him. And he was laughing. He said, okay, I'm excited.
Oh, that's awesome. What about those tests that we see on the internet that are like, if you can stand on one leg and then get down and tie up your shoe and then get up, and it means that you're like, like a 30-year-old. Like, are any of those legit or are they stupid?
Well, that's so funny. I love that you asked that. I know two that I can speak to with some
awesome
knowledge and authority, which is like, grip strength, being so correlated with everything from cardiovascular health to your immune health to your mortality. I mean, it's really interesting because like
I was so surprised that
and it's a proxy.
Strength. I was like, it'll help me open pickles, but like what what am I using that for?
But it is a proxy for how active you are in your life, right? So so it's not like sword in the stone like territory that we're talking about with this, but it is about like it's it is really amazing. Like all these studies show this, like how it is just a good stand-in for telling you how you're doing, like health wise, and what you could be doing more. And it's just that, it's just one measurement, but also this, the sit to stand test, which is just one, another test where doctors, it's just like how many times in a minute you can sit down and stand up in a chair without using your hands. Right. So it's like your core strength. So like it's opposite of your grip strength. You're not using your hands, but it's a test of your core strength, your balance, and just like functionally this very basic movement. Are you doing things that would support this functional health and movement? And so,
and that's a chair. That's not on the floor.
Yeah, it's just a chair.
Yeah.
And the one that I think I know the one you're talking about, where you're like sitting maybe like cross-legged or something, and you have to get up and
get up
with
your hands. And,
yeah.
Or I think one of them is be able to put on a sock while standing and then take the sock off, and then all the stuff.
Right. Sure. You know what? I will say, like, if you can do all of those things, that's great. Yeah. But they're not, I mean, they are all just proxies for like a one way of telling like how you're doing. How is your balance? How is your overall core strength? Like, are you wobbly? Like, do you know, and it's just like, can you improve on that and get yourself to a point in which you don't feel, that you feel pretty confident in doing all those things. I think that's like, it's not a bad, and it's an easy way, it's a simple way to understand like how you're doing.
Yeah. When I read that, I mean, I never cared about my grip strength before, to be honest. But then now, because I'm like super vain about my strength, now I'm doing dead hangs all the time. So I'm like, oh my gosh. Bonnie, can you tell us we talked a lot about strength training and, Jan taught on the stones and stuff like that, but there's another kind of strength, and that's really that like grit and endurance. And I would love it if you could tell the story about the Remembrance Run.
So I organized the book in these 5 different ways, really the characteristics that we think of when we think about muscle, right? So like strength and form, like, again, like ideal body, like, are you in good form, perfect form? Action, right? Are you a person of action, like jumping, like all this, the movement based stuff, flexibility, of course, and endurance. And endurance is one of those things that, again, like these are qualities that are not just of the tangible stuff of muscle. It's about who we are as people and what we value, right? And I found that so interesting overall, just like in terms of like unpacking the meaning of muscle for us as human beings who are always always making meaning and attributing that to everything that we do. And with endurance, I wanted to tell a story or wanted to tell stories that kind of, we're multi-layered, right? So not just about running, say. So like humans we're built to move. We're built to lift, run, climb, and running is one of those things that we do very, very well. And the gluteus maximus, of course, is like the muscle that we are the only animals on Earth with such a large gluteal muscle, right? And it's actually the key to our evolutionary success on this planet, like outsize, in that we like evolved to run long distances efficiently without getting tired, right? So
fat bottom girls really do make the rock and roll go on.
Big bottom girls. Just that this glute, I mean, you like having a strong butt muscle was like how we chased down animals on the savannah, like, and how we were able to outlast them. So that is one thing physically that kind of like speaks to us as humans. And also because we as humans are a social species, like doing this thing together, running together, moving together has meaning. And so what do I mean by this? Think about all of the endurance runs, marathons, the mythology around running a long distance, going a long way, pushing past your limits, and how we elevate that. We feel that to do something like that, to like suffer physically, has value. Like when we do these things together, it has value. It's a way to demonstrate care. When we do these like fun runs, when we do these, we're running for a cause, like marathon, like what is this actual thing? Like anything we do at length, persevering, gritting through it is like a way to show that you care. Right. And it's so interesting to me, again, in this like increasingly virtual world, that to physically show up for someone and physically demonstrate that care in like this run. We want to support someone who is going to be training for this like epic marathon, ultra marathon, bike ride just for charity. Like we want to do that because we understand that that has meaning and value.
Can you tell us a little bit about your experience with Koo Stevens?
Yes. So that was for the endurance section of the book. And I wanted to tell stories that kind of reflected, not just the tangible quality of muscle like endurance or strength or form or flexibility, but also all of the meaning, all of the metaphorical stuff, right, that we attach to muscle. And so with Koo, he is this a Native American runner. He grew up on the Yarrington Paiute Reservation in Nevada. He was like the cross-country team of one on his tiny high school in Yarrington, Nevada. And he was also like the fastest high school cross-country runner that his senior year in high school. And he not only was physically gifted, is just like tremendously fast, had dreams of competing and wanted to go to University of Oregon, Nike Town, Tracktown USA, and follow in the footsteps of his idols, like running for that school. But he also understood what running meant to him, culturally speaking, like sort of in his own family. His great grandfather escaped from an Indian boarding school when he was a kid, 8 years old. He was taken away to one of these many hundreds of Indian boarding schools across North America, in which a lot of kids were taken from their homes, from their families, from their reservations to kind of be, have their indigenous culture basically taken away, to be more white. And they weren't allowed to speak the language. They weren't allowed to have their hair the way they were accustomed to. They had to cut it. They had to dress like white people. And basically like eradicated generations, a whole history of like culture and memory that is a wound that is still being felt today. And so his grandfather ran away from the Stewart Indian School, 50 miles home across the Nevada desert.
And he was 8 years old?
He was 8 years old. And then the authorities came back and got him and brought him back. And he ran away again. Same thing. And the third time he escaped, they let him stay. And he grew to be like a very respected tribal elder. And was an alfalfa farmer, just was beloved in the community. And he never talked about his experiences at the boarding school. A lot of these schools really had terrible records of abuse, and a lot of these kids died there. And so, and this legacy continues to reverberate across Native communities all over the world, really, because this has happened in other places as well. And he wanted to honor his great-grandfather's escape and run. And at the time when he was this, having this experience as this very gifted and successful competitive runner in high school, he said, that he found out that, news came out in Kamloops about that, Indian school, and a lot of the graves were discovered there. And again, like every time something like this happens, it kind of reopens these wounds. And so he and his family said, okay, like what about running from retracing that run that his great grandfather did? And so they did that. He did the Remembrance Run that first summer. Invited people to join along, got a lot of attention for that. And it was really amazing because by the second run, like the senator a lot of government officials came. Billy Mills, the celebrated Olympic gold medalist, came and supported his coups. Not only like he's just, he's not only this incredibly gifted young man as a runner, but he's just been able to communicate the story and the history and the generosity of like inviting people in to learn more about what happened and to bring to the experience of running, tracing this landscape with your body and then understanding with your body, not just with like learning with your brain, that this happened and how do we make sure it doesn't happen again. And it's not like, he said, it's not a protest. It's not about politics. It's about recognizing that this thing happened and to reconcile with that. And it, I had the great privilege of joining the third run. So like, Frank Quinn, his great grandfather, escaped 3 times. And so Koo ran this remembrance run 3 times. And by this third run, like 100 people were on this run. We're moving as one collective body across the desert and really understanding what running can do together. And as I say in the book, it's like running, we are built to move as humans. To lift, climb, run is like something that we are like, it is part of our evolutionary success on this planet. Muscles allow us to do that. The gluteus maximus allows us to do that. And yet as humans, as a cultural species, it means something to run together. And this is what it means to run with purpose. And it makes this physical act mean more than just the thing itself. And muscles are themselves. They do all these things that we rely on them to do on a daily basis, but they also mean so much more than what they allow us to do in the world. So that's what this book is about.
So when you did that run, I believe you reversed it, right? You started where Koo's grandfather's home was, and then you ran to the site of the school, which does it still stand?
It does. And it's now like a cultural center. And there is a cemetery there. And it was really moving to, and very hard, I should say. Like it was physically really.
You were not a runner. Do I remember that? You're an athlete, but you didn't have trained to run.
I don't love running. I do it when I need to do it. I mean, I ran track in high school, and I would have run over the years, but it's not like my favorite mode of movement. And, I just am like a water baby, but I also so I went to follow this run. I didn't really intend to run, but I also was moved to run. I had to do it. I had to run. So the first day I ran 2 legs, which was 10 miles, which was plenty in the heat and the sun. It was just crazy because it was so hot that your sweat evaporated the second that it surfaced on your body. You never even sweat. You never even had to go to the bathroom. And I was chugging water like crazy. But you learn something with your body when you experience something like that. It's not just this intellectual, my brain processing this history and what happened, but it's understanding with your body that this thing happened. This 8-year-old boy crossed this desert 3 times to get home to his family. And, to learn that in an embodied way really has profound impact. And so I think that's the kind of thing that was so special about figuring out how to tell that story in a way that hit, that really had that impact that it had for all of us on that run, and to understand that we as humans find meaning in movement and moving together.
Bonnie, in researching this book, did you change your own practice in any way? Did this inspire you to do anything differently in your own physical practice?
Yes, I now lift weights on a much more regular basis than I did. And you know what changed for me is that I appreciate my body so much more than I did before. I always loved moving and being in the world. Like the last book I wrote was Why We Swim. And I obviously love swimming, but I think writing this book made me understand how special and unique our muscles are, like in our bodies, like what they allow us to do. Again, like not just like the locomotion side, but all of the chemical changes that that exercise, movement creates in our body in a way that is like a holistic, like muscles belong up here along with our brain, and how important and actually really like, and it's motivational to know that, I think, and on a metaphysical level, like, a lot of people, they don't love lifting weights. It's not something that they would do. It's like taking, they're like, I need to take a dose of like iron pills, like lifting weights. And I love that actually in some ways, because when you understand what your muscles are doing for you, like on all of these levels, I think it makes you want to do those things. It makes you want to honor your body and the gift that it gives you to do this. And that to me is something that's like the intangible stuff about muscle.
That's awesome. I know so many people listening to this are going to want to dive deeper into this and kind of get all motivated to get their strength training on. Where can people learn about your work and your book?
Well, first, let's see, On Muscle.
It's beautiful.
Is out now.
It is. Do you love the cover? It is a beautiful
I really love the cover. I really love the cover. It matches your shirt. You did.
Yes.
You did that. And you can find me on bonnietsui.com and on Instagram, bonnietsui8. And I would love to hear from you.
I will leave all the links, and I can't wait for people to get to know all this work. It's amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bonnie. Well, my friend, if that conversation lit a fire under your gluteus maximus, I just want to let you know that my strength training program specifically for Gen X women is coming up soon. It's called Strong AF, and we've got a new cohort starting on September 7th. You can get on the wait list at fitfeelsgood.com/strongaf. That's fitfeelsgood.com/strongaf. The link will be in the show notes. And between now and September 7th, if you want to get all excited about the magic of your muscles, definitely check out Bonnie's book, also in the show notes. I'll see you and your fantastic muscles next week. Hey dude, thanks for listening. If you like this episode, make sure you're subscribed so you can get the next one. And by the way, if you rate and review this podcast, it really helps me get found by other people who need some goals, grit, and some woo-woo shit. And be sure to connect and DM me at Una Duncan on Instagram and let me know what you thought of the episode. Chat soon.